There is a room beneath Grand Central Terminal that does not appear on any blueprint. Its location is not listed on any public map of the building, and it is accessed by a single elevator and a staircase carved directly out of bedrock. Inconspicuously placed behind a door in a public corridor that 10 million people walk past every year without knowing it exists, this space holds secrets that date back over a century. During the Second World War, armed guards stood at that door with orders to shoot on sight anyone who entered without clearance. Anyone carrying a bucket of sand was to be killed immediately, not detained, not questioned, but killed. This room is called M42, and it is arguably the most important space in New York City that you will never be allowed to visit. It sits 10 stories below street level, blasted out of the solid Manhattan schist that forms the bedrock of the island, directly beneath the feet of every commuter who has ever walked through Grand Central Terminal's main concourse. Spanning 22,000 square feet, this cavern was carved into the spine of the city. Inside it, when it was built, 9 rotary converters stood 20 feet tall and weighed 15 tons each, converting 11,000 volts of alternating current into direct current that powered the electrified third rail of every train moving in and out of the terminal. Every train, every day for decades, relied on this single room. During World War II, it powered 80% of the troop and equipment movements on the northeastern seaboard. This room was the beating heart of the rail system that moved the American military to the ports where it shipped out to fight in Europe and the Pacific. It was so secret that its existence was known to fewer people than the Manhattan Project itself. But the deeper you look into what lies beneath Grand Central Terminal, the more you realize that M42 is not just a hidden power station, it is a door to a much larger narrative. Behind it is a story about what the Vanderbilts actually built under New York, how much of it has never been publicly documented, and why the most powerful family of the Gilded Age constructed a hidden empire beneath the surface of a city that still does not fully understand what is under its feet. To understand how this happened, you have to look back at what the Vanderbilts actually did at the turn of the 20th century. The official history tells you they built a massive train station, but the truth is they built an entire subterranean city. In 1899, Cornelius Vanderbilt's New York Central Railroad controlled the most valuable piece of real estate in Manhattan, the massive open-air rail yards that stretched from 42nd Street to 56th Street along Park Avenue. The original Grand Central Depot, built in 1871, had already been expanded into Grand Central Station by 1900, but the Vanderbilts and their visionary chief engineer, William J. Wilgus, had a plan that went far beyond a simple transportation hub. Wilgus proposed something that had never been attempted in human history. He suggested sinking the massive open rail yards entirely underground, electrifying the tracks to eliminate the lethal smoke and steam of locomotives, and covering the entire surface with streets and building lots. By selling the air rights above the buried tracks to developers, they could construct an entirely new neighborhood on top of the infrastructure. The trains would run beneath the city, and the city would be built on top of the trains. The surface and the underground would become 2 separate worlds, one visible, one hidden, stacked on top of each other, sharing the same coordinates but operating in entirely different dimensions. The ambitious plan was approved and construction began in 1903. What they built over the next decade is staggering in its scale and almost entirely invisible to the people who use it today. Grand Central Terminal, the majestic building the public sees, opened on February 2, 1913, featuring 46 tracks spread across 2 levels, the upper level for long-distance trains and the lower level for commuter trains. But beneath both levels, beneath the tracks, the platforms, and the subrooms, they carved M42 out of the bedrock. This raised a critical question that historians still debate. Why would you hide a critical power station from your own blueprints? The official answer given in later years was security, and certainly by the time World War II arrived, that rationale proved real. However, M42 was built in 1913, and the decision to omit it from public plans was made decades before any wartime threat justified it. The secrecy was original. It was built directly into the design. The Vanderbilts did not just build a room underground, they built a room that was fundamentally designed not to exist on paper. Furthermore, M42 is only the most famous of Grand Central's hidden spaces. It is by no means the only one. Beneath the terminal, a network of tunnels, passageways, sealed corridors, and abandoned platforms extends in every direction. While some of these spaces are documented, many are not. The known network includes tunnels connecting the terminal to the Waldorf Astoria, the Roosevelt Hotel, the Commodore Hotel, the Gray Bar Building, the Manhattan Savings Bank Building, and the Channon Building. This subterranean web connected every major building in the Vanderbilt real estate empire, allowing people, materials, power, and information to move through Midtown Manhattan invisibly, right under the feet of a city that had no idea these passages existed. Among these hidden features is Track 61, a private platform and siding located beneath the Waldorf Astoria Hotel, accessible from the terminal's lower levels. It was never built for public use. It was built exclusively for private rail cars. The rich and the powerful could arrive in New York in their personal train cars, be routed directly to Track 61, step out on the private platform, and take a dedicated elevator directly into the Waldorf Astoria's basement without ever being seen by the public, without stepping outside, and without passing through a single space where an ordinary citizen might encounter them. The first documented use of Track 61 was by General John J. Pershing in 1938, who was brought through the passage to avoid physical exertion after a heart attack. However, the platform's most famous association is with President Franklin Delano Roosevelt. Having contracted polio at age 39 and using a wheelchair, Roosevelt employed Track 61 to enter and exit New York without the public seeing his disability. On at least one fully documented occasion, October 21, 1944, Secret Service records confirm that Roosevelt departed the Waldorf Astoria via the private elevator to the underground siding and boarded his rail car beneath the hotel. Track 61 represents a parallel infrastructure built specifically so that the people who controlled the city could move through it without being a part of it. This underground network was the core of a massive development the Vanderbilts called Terminal City. Constructed between 1913 and 1931, Terminal City was an entire neighborhood developed on the air rights above the buried tracks. Dozens of office towers and luxury hotels were all connected to each other and to the terminal by underground passageways. Above ground, they appeared as separate buildings on separate blocks, but below ground, they functioned as a single integrated organism sharing one circulatory system of tunnels, power lines, and private platforms. Today, the complete inaccessibility of Grand Central's underground is maintained with absolute consistency. M42 has never been open to the public, and even today, the sub-basement remains heavily guarded. Track 61 is closed, and the tunnels connecting the terminal to surrounding buildings are mostly sealed, boarded up, or repurposed in ways that obscure their original function. The passageway to the Roosevelt Hotel remains blocked by a makeshift door marked "Do Not Enter," keeping the full extent of this underground network a mystery. The Vanderbilt enterprise built beneath Midtown Manhattan for over 3 decades, yet it was never comprehensively mapped in any document available to the public. When you stand in the main concourse of Grand Central Terminal today and look up at the ceiling painted with constellations, it is profound to realize that 10 stories down, carved into the bedrock, lies a hidden second city, built by design, maintained in secrecy, and completely closed to the world above.